Welcome back to Biff Bam Pow, a comic book podcast. Today is the first episode of a big miniseries that I have been wanting to do for a long time, and that is going through the entire library of comics by the creative team of Ed Brubaker and Sean Phillips. And I'm not alone. I am going to be joined by returning guest Jared Bird for this entire miniseries. So every single month, Jared and I are going to be covering one Ed Brubaker and Sean Phillips book. And we're going to be going in order by release. So obviously this first episode is going to be Scene of the Crime and Gotham Noir. And in the episode proper, we explain why we're doing both these books in one episode. So you'll hear that in a minute. But regardless, I'm so excited to do this series. And I hope you all enjoy this journey with Jared and I. As always, thank you so much to my patrons, Matt Parent, Malcolm Russell Nelson, Think, Joe Palumbo, and Chris Hacker. If you like what you hear on the main show, consider joining the Patreon linked down below. It's only one tier at $2 a month and you get all the benefits, which include early access to main feed episodes, monthly bonus episodes, new comic reviews, monthly AMAs, and more. It's never expected from me, but it is always appreciated. So yeah, if you want to join the Patreon, that is linked down in the show notes. If you're looking for a good place to buy your omnibuses, trade paperbacks, other hardcovers, and graphic novels for a great price, head to organicpricebooks.com and at checkout use code biffbampowpod for $2 off your order, or you could use code biffbampowpod for $5 off 4 items or more. As always, all my social media is linked down in the show notes below, and that is all the plugs from me. Thank you all so much for listening, and I hope you enjoy this episode. Jared, welcome back to the show. How you been?
Happy to be back. I've been good, but I've been busy. Wrote a whole dissertation somewhere along the way, but no, doing all good.
Yeah, and that dissertation actually has a lot in common with what we're talking about and what we're going to be doing every month until this is over, because I don't know how many episodes this is going to be, but for the next few months, we're going to be doing this once a month. You guys see the title. I'm titling this, and we're going to workshop this, but this is like the thing I have in mind right now. I'm going to call it the Brubaker Phillips Files, and I think that's a good title.
I like that, yeah.
So yeah, if that is the title of this episode, of this like mini-series, then yeah, if you read the episode, that is the official title. If not, this will all be cut out. But yeah, we're basically just going to be going through the entire works of Ed Brubaker and Sean Phillips. I assume we're going to be ending with the new Criminal graphic novel, unless something else gets announced after that. But regardless, we're going to be doing their whole library of works up to the new Criminal, which is, there's a lot.
Yeah, there is a lot. There's a lot to talk about. But it's also quite exciting because it gives a chance. I mean, I read all of it over last year when I was preparing to write my dissertation on Criminal, but coming at it, having dissected the one series so much now, it's interesting to see everything else in a new light a little bit, you know? So excited for that new book as well.
Oh my God, me too. I love Criminal, and we haven't gotten a new Criminal since what, 2019?
Yeah.
So this is, it's going to be awesome. I'm really excited. I'm excited to do, because a lot of this stuff I haven't read in a while, and some of it, including one of the things we're going to be talking about today, I've never read. So this is going to be really interesting. But yeah, you mentioned your dissertation, and I want to kind of put a pin in that. I wanted to, because that's centered on Criminal. So I want to talk a bit about your dissertation, or get into that a bit when we start the first volume of Criminal.
Sounds good.
Like a couple months down the line. But yeah, so before we get into the main meat of this episode, you know the drill. I want to know if your Letterboxd top 4 has changed at all.
It has. It felt very strange to do so because I was quite satisfied with the way it was. But I've been on a big horror kick lately. I've been watching quite a lot of horror movies, and it reconnected with that side of me where I was like, wait, why aren't there any horror movies in my top 4? Because I had Mulholland Drive, but that's not, that kind of is horror adjacent in a sense.
Yeah.
So I slid back in my 2 favorite horror movies, which are Ridley Scott's Alien. It's timeless. It's perfect.
It's perfect movie. It's one of my favorites.
So good. I remember that was the first, like a fun little trivia bit, is that was the first horror movie I ever really sat down and watched, because my mother is a huge fan of the Alien movies. So she was like, she doesn't do horror outside of that, but she was like, okay, I want to show this to you. I think you're old enough now. And it kind of awoke something in my brain a little bit where it was like, oh, the scary movies can be fun, and this could be really cool and really exciting and really interesting. And I was like on the edge of the couch, like looking so intently at it the whole time. So yeah, it's perfect. I've seen it in theaters twice. Like, it's so good.
I have a funny story about that, actually. I was supposed to, the last time it was in theaters for whatever anniversary it was, I had tickets for it, and I had come home from work that day, and I was just so like out of it, long day at work, and I think I had tickets for like 6:30, and I'm just sitting at the counter, like talking to my mom, just eating dinner, whatever, and I look over at the clock, and it's 6:45.
Oh no!
And I was like, oh, I forgot that I was going to go see Alien, and I just was like, you know what, whatever, I'm too tired. So I just missed my screening. So I am so jealous of you that you got to see that in theaters multiple times.
I mean, that literally happened to me yesterday. I was supposed to go see Friday the 13th with a friend, and we were too locked into talking, and we kind of looked down, and it was 9:10, and the movie started at 9. We were like, whoops.
Yeah.
The other change to my top 4 was putting back in The Silence of the Lambs, Jonathan Demme's The Silence of the Lambs. I genuinely think that movie, like front to back, like it won like all of the big 5 Oscars, and for a horror movie to get nominated for an Oscar is something. It's an achievement. To win an Oscar is an achievement. To win the big 5 and to be one of only 3 films in history to do so, or 4, I can't remember, is incredible. Even if there is a bit of a category fraud thing happening with Anthony Hopkins being lead actor, not supporting actor.
That's so weird. He's in it for like 14 minutes. Like, it's that again, another perfect movie.
Yeah. It is just, it's so, every time I watch it, I'm like, wow, this really is just perfect. Like, it is just incredible. Like, there's nothing wrong with this movie. It's so seamless. And one of those few movies where I prefer the movie to the book.
I've never read the book,
rare.
so I've never read Red Dragon. Yeah,
Red Dragon's awesome. Red Dragon, I don't think any of the adaptations have got it just right, but Silence of the Lambs improves upon the material because it adds the kind of it's there in the book, but obviously the effect of having a camera adds to that idea that, like, the almost voyeuristic predatory element towards Clarice, where you feel like she's in danger even when she's not. Even when she's just going around the FBI offices, you feel like she's in danger because something's just not quite right about the way everything's shot and everything like that. And so it adds this lens that, like, because Jonathan Demme very much wanted to lean into the commentary on feminism in the workplace and the gender roles and stuff that go along with this, people not taking Clarice seriously because she's a young woman. And so he uses the camera in search of that in a way that doesn't come off like predatory from him. Obviously, he was a gay man, but it comments on those themes really well.
Yeah, another masterpiece. I'm curious, what do you think about Michael Mann's Manhunter?
It's great. It's Michael Mann.
Yeah,
it's really good, but I think the only misfire is that because man's way of approaching material like that is different. Man is like very much lets a lot be left unsaid, like in Heat, which is also
another perfect movie.
Yeah, just perfection. But in Heat, like the main two characters meet twice.
Yeah. And the best scene in the movie is the first
time. And so he leaves a lot left unsaid and unshown. And it's the same thing with Manhunter. There's a lot that he leaves for you to figure out. And that works great a lot of the time, but there are some times where I do wish he would be more explicit about it. But that's just me coming at it from a book reader perspective. That always
that makes sense.
Yeah, because I read Red Dragon before I watched any adaptations of it.
Okay.
So when I watched Manhunter, it was like, oh, okay. You could have mentioned that part a little bit. It's slightly
all right. Yeah. I'll definitely I'm interested in reading the book because shout out my favorite podcast that I talk about all the time, Blank Check, with Griffin and David. Their episode on Silence of the Lambs, they do talk a lot about the differences between Red Dragon and Silence of the Lambs, the novel, and all the movies, including like Hannibal, and like all the ancillary movies and TV shows and whatever. And it's really interesting. So I do really want to get to the books eventually.
That's my favorite episode of Blank Check.
It's so good. Yeah. It's so good. Right. By the way, side tangent, did you know that their next miniseries is going to be on the Coen brothers?
Oh, did Coen brothers win the poll?
They won. Okay. They won the March Madness. I'm so excited.
Literally to watch when I get off call. For audio listeners, which is everyone, I picked up my DVD of Blood Simple by the Coen brothers.
I'm so excited. Hey, Griffin, David, if you're listening, come on the show. Let's talk about Steve Ditko Spider-Man or something.
Yeah.
But all right. So, what's your third movie?
Oh no, the other two are the same as last time. So it's Mulholland Drive and The Lord of the Rings: Return of the King.
All right. So we don't have to talk about those. We talked about them last time. Both great movies, of course. But yeah, mine is still unchanged. I think there might be a different one from when I had you on last. I know that I already said it on the show, but the new edition is a Goofy movie, and then the other, I love it so much.
Yeah.
And then the other three are still Kill Bill 2001 and King of Comedy. So those are all the same still.
I'm gonna shout out that The Beat did a really interesting article recently about the anniversary of a Goofy movie.
I read that,
talking about their own like personal experiences with stuff. So anyone listening should check that out if there are Goofy movie enthusiasts. It was a whole lot of work to put that together from a behind the scenes perspective. So I think they should be really proud. I'm not saying that the Goofy article is why we got an Eisner nom, but
Also, congrats, by the way, on the Eisner nomination. That's huge.
I very much don't feel like I should get any credit for that because I'm not editorial, but I think it's wonderful that we've been acknowledged in that way. We got, there was, Heidi's been invited to go to the Eisners and everything. Like, it's going to be really good. And I hope, even if we don't win, it's still so special to have our efforts recognized.
Of course, yeah. So congrats to the team at Comics Beat. You guys deserve it. One of the best journalism sites. I read it every single time I get the email from the newsletter. I always go through all the articles. So yeah, well deserved. But all right, so let's get into the main topic. So we're going to be talking about two books that are shorter and not really. They're significant in that this is the first kind of collaboration of Brubaker and Phillips, but they're not like the big like books that like this isn't like Criminal or Kill or Be Killed or Reckless or Sleeper or any of those books that are huge. These are the first one we're going to be talking about is Scene of the Crime, which is technically their first collaboration, and I'll get into why I say technically in a minute, but the next one we're going to be talking about after that is Batman Gotham Noir, which was a DC Elseworlds one-shot. But we're going to be starting with Seed of the Crime because it's the bigger of the two, and it came out first. So this is written, of course, by Ed Brubaker, pencils by Michael Lark, inks by Sean Phillips, letters by John Costanza, and colors by James Sinclair. So you can probably notice this isn't penciled by Sean Phillips, but it is their first collaboration. So just some background on Scene of the Crime. Released in 1999. It's a 4-issue miniseries, originally published by DC and Vertigo, and then later it was reprinted by Image. Very recently too, like within the past couple of years, it was reprinted by Image. So this was out of print, around like 2021. This was out of print for years. So this was, like I said, this was the first time Ed Brubaker worked with Sean Phillips. Not only that, it was also the first time he worked with Michael Lark, which I didn't know.
Yeah.
And they obviously you would know that team from like Daredevil, Gotham Central, a couple of other smaller projects, but yeah, this is the first time that Brubaker worked with both Phillips and Lark. So that's fascinating. Two of his probably most well-known collaborators aside from maybe like Steve Epting. But yeah, so this is obviously a big like milestone historically in modern comics, really, because these are two very famous creative teams.
Yeah.
So yeah, Brubaker pitched the series to Vertigo as he was a huge fan of hard-boiled fiction, and he was a huge fan of authors like Raymond Chandler and Ross McDonald. More importantly, Ross McDonald, because Brubaker was attracted to these types of stories because their willingness to tackle subjects and themes that were surprising and that they addressed issues that hit close to home. I actually have a quote here from Brubaker talking about the works of McDonald. He says, It was McDonald's work more than anyone else's, his delving into the kind of things that can haunt you forever, that inspired me to write about my own demons and those of my generation in the form of a mystery. And that
I really could have used that on my dissertation. God damn it.
Yeah. So that quote really kind of puts into perspective, like, Scene of the Crime, the series itself.
Yeah.
So before we get into the book, I want to just give a quick synopsis on what this actually is. So in this fast-paced, gritty murder mystery, Jack Harriman, a young private detective burdened with a checkered past, looks to begin his rebirth by taking on a simple missing persons case. That's your elevator pitch.
Yeah.
So we will get into the details of it now. So I first want to ask you, like, what was your first experience with the creative team of Brubaker and Phillips? You mentioned a bit before, but why did you get into them?
So it's quite a roundabout way. I was a big fan of That Texas Blood, which is a great Western crime drama by Chris Condon and Jacob Phillips. And I was a fan of that for years until I sat down with Jacob to discuss the kind of working with Chris Condon and everything like that, maybe 2 years ago now, or a year ago now. Actually, no, it would be 2 years ago, because it was when the Enfield Gang Massacre was kind of preparing to be released in the build-up to that book. And in that, while researching that, I found out that he I knew that he was a colorist and I knew he'd colored other books, but I found out that his father was an artist as well. So in inverse to what usually happens to them, I discovered the son first and then the father, and not the other way around. And Jacob gets a kick out of that to this day. But I then read Reckless. That was the first thing I read because I wanted to. Obviously, it was the one that Jacob had just been coloring and just worked on at the time, relatively recently. So he told me that that's the one I should check out. And so I did. And then I kind of just absorbed everything in about a 2-month span. And eventually it got to the point where I was very much delving into like even the nooks and crannies, you know, Gotham Noir, Scene of the Crime, stuff that's like very adjacent to it, you know, a criminal one-off special that's not been reprinted anywhere. Like, and yeah, it clicked with me like that because I'm like massively interested in crime fiction. I also love writers like Raymond Chandler and Ross MacDonald and like stuff like Richard Stark as well.
Yeah.
And I was already into like crime comics. You know, I already loved A History of Violence and mixed feelings about Sin City, but you know, the kind of big crime fiction books and comics. And so it was kind of this moment of like, what rock have I been living under to not know about these? Especially because I love Brubaker's Captain America run so much as well, and his Daredevil work. So it was like, how the hell did this miss my purview? And I just kind of read as much of it as I could. And then it came time to thinking about a dissertation, and I was like, yeah, I think I know what I want to do. It was a pretty no-brainer decision. But yeah, how about you? How did you discover Brubaker, Phillips?
Well, I didn't discover the sun first, so I'm the majority. But yeah, so I obviously I've been reading comics my whole life. I knew who Ed Brubaker was from a young age. I knew his Marvel work. I read a lot of his Batman stuff. I found out about Brubaker. I think the first time I found out about who he was from Captain America. I think a lot of people in our like age demographic found out about who Ed Brubaker was from Captain America because obviously it blew up during the movies. Like all those movies are inspired by his run. Yeah. But I found out about Sean Phillips. Oh, man, I weirdly enough, I knew the name Sean Phillips because of his association with Ed Brubaker, but I had never seen his art until I read, I want to say Sleeper was the first Brubaker Phillips book I read, but I really can't remember because similar to you, when I read like the first Brubaker Phillips book I read, like I just absorbed all of it. Yeah. So it's kind of like I read a lot of it around the same time, but I want to say Sleeper was the first one, and that was a couple years back. And yeah, I instantly just became obsessed. I love the way, Sean Phillips is one of my favorite artists in all of comics. So we'll kind of get into it because with Gotham Noir being their first real collaboration as Sean Phillips is the main artist, I find it so fascinating the evolution of Sean Phillips's art. And I always find it fascinating going back in his older work and just seeing like it was so good back then, but just the evolution of how it is now. Like it is such a huge improvement, and you could still tell it's the same guy, but his work today is just incredible, and we're going to get into it throughout this entire miniseries, just the evolution of Sean Phillips. And other Sean Phillips works too. Like I recently went back and read Joe Casey's Wildcats from Wildstorm, which is around the same time he was doing Sleeper. And first of all, that 2000s era of Wildstorm is so good. And Joe Casey's Wildcats, both runs, he did Wildcats Volume 2 starting at like issue 8, and that's when Sean Phillips was on art, did the entire run up to like issue 30 or something, and then relaunched it with Wildcats 3.0. That is one of the best team books ever. And then it got canceled at issue 24 of 3.0, and it's so unfinished. Like there are so many it just ends. Like it just stops. It just stops. But yeah, so that's like the earliest Sean Phillips stuff I kind of remember, and same with Brubaker. I don't know, like I really love this creative team. I really don't know if they're my favorite of all time. They might become my favorite of all time, like as we go through this miniseries. Yeah, right. But they're definitely up there. I will always pick up something that they will do, and I don't think they've ever missed. Like there's obviously like stuff that's better, stuff that's worse. But I really don't think when they work together, it's always something interesting.
Yeah.
And I love it.
They never do the same thing twice either, which I really like. They never feel like they're repeating themselves. And every time it feels like they're getting close to repeating themselves, they shift direction quite drastically.
I agree. And what's really interesting too is that they typically do the crime genre. Like for almost everything they do, it's some type of play on the crime genre. But like you said, it is never samey. It is always something unique and interesting. Like their most recent graphic novel, Houses of the Unholy, it is very steeped in that crime genre, but it takes a different twist, and there's a lot of commentary on like modern day stuff. And it's nothing like stuff you would see in Criminal, and same with Criminal. Each Criminal arc is wholly unique. Yeah. So yeah, that's kind of like my thoughts on this creative team. I honestly, I could not tell you what the first thing I've read from this. I read all the stuff like Reddit. I honestly might have been reading Sleeper alongside with like a bunch of other stuff with their stuff. Yeah. So, it all gets muddy, but so let's kind of get into Scene of the Crime. What are just your general thoughts on this miniseries?
So I would classify this in my my underrated favorites comics pile. Oh, sorry, there's an ambulance.
That's all good.
Yeah, so I actually own first edition single issues of all of Scene of the Crime.
That's awesome.
I went to a comic shop and they were asking about my favorite writers. This is up in like Bath in England, and they just had like a full set of it, and they were like, "Yeah, take it, man. It's yours." We £4, and I was like, "Yeah, great. That's a steal." There's something about the kind of like for a bit of context as well. I can't remember. I don't know where the source I got this was from. I think it might be the back of the new edition or something. But Scene of the Crime was supposed to be the first miniseries following like Jack Harriman as a character, and there would be other installments, kind of like the typical, the way that Raymond Chandler would have his one detective character, but each book was different. So you could read each book standalone, but they all follow the same character, and that would be the same thing as Scene of the Crime. So there'd be another kind of book which would continue from this, and it would have Harriman on another case, but it just didn't get picked up. For like Image was like, we'll take the miniseries, we'll see how it goes, and then we'll go from there. And they were like, not Image, sorry, Vertigo, and they were like, okay, we weren't super happy with it, but do you want to do some work on Batman? And of course, Michael Lark and Brubaker did Gotham Central for years, right? It's a 70-issue run. So that kind of just, it wasn't a no from Vertigo, but it was we've got another book right now. And that took precedent. Obviously, it's not Sean Phillips on art, but Michael Lark is also one of the great comic artists of the 90s and 2000s.
Oh, yeah.
There's something about his early style where it is very close to what Sean does, in a way. Like, it is very much like they're both coming from a similar... they're both working within a similar field. Obviously, later on, Michael Lark would go for more photorealistic artwork with stuff like Lazarus, whereas Sean would lead more into stylization with his later stuff. But I think it's cool to see. I'm also just a fan of cool to see how they worked at the time. I'm a fan of Vertigo books in general.
Me too, yeah. We talked about it last time we were on, yeah.
Anything from this time period, I like the way comics were made at that time. I like how they look. Yeah. I like how they read. I appreciate that it's that in between period before everything became really decompressed, but after your Chris Claremont era of like we're waxing poetic for 50 lines every page. Like, this is a dense book, but it never feels overwhelming, or that there's too much going on.
Yeah, and I feel like Brubaker was one of the writers that was able to perfectly balance that, because obviously he really blew up during the decompression comics era, along with Bendis and Jeff Johns and all those guys. So I feel like Brubaker's one of our favorites, but I think he's just in general one of the greatest comic book writers of all time, because he's able to take on different approaches to writing. And you know, I also love the 80s into the 90s Vertigo era of comics, just in general, like British invasion into the late 90s, early 2000s stuff. Like, even, and you know, I love decompression in comics, but I think that really peaked in the 2000s to like the 2010s, and now it's like people are playing. I don't really even know how to describe it. It's like it's kind of a pastiche on like what that actually was in the 2000s, because it worked really well in that. Like, you read that stuff now and it flows nice, but now it just feels like padding as opposed to a really cool way of storytelling. But that's a whole another conversation. That's a whole loaded thing. But Scene of the Crime is interesting. This is my second time reading it.
Right.
It's not my favorite thing that Brubaker's done, obviously. It's very early on in his career. I think he had only done like two other things before this, or two other like major things before this. I think, I want to say Low Life was his first like big project.
He did a couple like small books with like Fantagraphics that are you cannot find them anywhere. And I've managed to scrape some off of like Internet Archive and stuff, but they're really difficult to find. Low Life was his like the thing that like got noticed, and he wrote and illustrated that. And in terms of Vertigo, he did a 64-page one shot with them called The Fall, which was basically if The Fall sold well, he could do Scene of the Crime, and if the Scene of the Crime could do well, he could do more. It was
that's interesting. So I mean, it all comes back to Brian Michael Bendis, because just like Bendis, Brubaker got his start by writing and drawing his own stuff. So that's interesting. It all comes back to Brian Michael Bendis.
It all comes back to Bendis. I mean, Bendis was also this is from the back matter of Scene of the Crime. Bendis is also,
I know Bendis did the forward,
quite heavily involved in these books at this time.
I know. I just that's like an inside joke with this. Like, I just love circling everything back to Brian Michael Bendis. If I could find a way to link like Jack Kirby's career, like the beginning of Marvel to Bendis, I'll like find a way. I'm sure there's a way. There's probably some way, So the Scene of the Crime is a very interesting comic, and I actually didn't know about the whole thing where this was supposed to be like a jump start into having Jack be a main character in just other graphic novels. And what's interesting is that this is basically, they do this later with Reckless. That's what Reckless is.
And
which
Criminal
I find
to
very
an extent
interesting
as well.
Criminal to an extent, but Reckless more so, because Reckless follows the same, just one protagonist. Like Criminal is multiple different characters that kind of pop in and out of different stories, but this Reckless is Ethan Reckless as a protagonist in random adventures every graphic novel. So later on, like, he did get to do that later on, which I find very interesting. Let's kind of, sorry, go ahead.
It is the bread and butter of the genre. In hard-boiled fiction, it is very much tradition. You've got your Philip Marlowe's, your Parker. Hell, this isn't hard-boiled, but someone like Hercule Poirot, Agatha Christie's Poirot books, it is the same kind of thing where it is following each different story as a different case. So I can see where they've laid that out with this book, because obviously it does heavy lifting of like explaining Jack and some of his trauma and his backstory and stuff. There's also the Christmas special that is included in the reprint edition, which it very much is like, okay, so we're doing another case, which it adds credence to the idea that like he was going to reappear and stuff like that. And be a recurring detective figure. But yeah, they do that in Reckless. Reckless is they fully commit to that. And every time I see Sean Phillips at a convention, I ask him when Reckless is coming back, and he says the same thing every time, which is, don't ask.
Man.
Yeah.
Oh, man. So I do kind of wish that we got more adventures with Jack. I think that this is good, but I feel like I would like to see, because unlike like Ethan Reckless, we'll get into that like fully with when we get to Reckless way down the line. But he's a private investigator like Jack in this, which is again interesting. Like this is kind of the groundwork for that series, which is very interesting. But Ethan Reckless is more of like a hard ass, you know?
Yeah.
He gets the job done. He's not afraid to get violent, whereas Jack in this is the complete opposite.
Yeah.
He hates fighting. He hates, he's afraid to use a gun. He gets his ass kicked every single time he comes into contact with people, which I just find so interesting. So yeah, like, honestly, going into this, I did not think that we were going to be comparing this to Reckless, but now thinking about it,
the connective tissues,
this really did lay the groundwork for that series. And man, I later down the line, I can't wait to kind of get into more detail on that.
There's one thing I completely forgot to mention, which is that I brought this into when I was writing about Criminal. I really like that this book is like it fully dives into some of the ethics of, like, it's about a woman being injured, and it is explicitly focused on a crime that would happen to a woman. You know, like the mystery, not to spoil too much for people who haven't read it, but involves a girl going missing and then being found dead. And that's just like in the first issue, she's found dead. And it ties into cults and kind of manipulation and drugs and stuff like that. And first off, for a book in the 90s to be talking about that,
Huge.
less than 10 years out pre-code, or like, 10 to 15 years out pre-code, is huge. And I really like how Brubaker handles it with a sense of empathy. Like, Jack is quite viscerally disturbed at the findings and what he stumbles into, and it's very clearly not okay. A problem with a lot of older crime fiction, the people like Ross MacDonald and like Raymond Chandler, is that sometimes they will indulge too much in violence against women, and they will sensationalize it or add a lens of quite a disturbing lens to it. And Brubaker does not do that here. It is never fun that a woman has been hurt emotionally and killed. It is never fun that a family's been broken up. It's gets quite dark, and in a way that like a lot of their books do have like serious moments, but I do think that they become way more. They choose it way more carefully. Whereas this, it very much feels like, no, I've got a story I want to tell, and it goes to some places. And I think that might be why it's quite challenging for some people to read, because it is like you have to sit with it a little bit and think about like, okay, the implications of what's really gone on here is quite sad, and they present it with this kind of melancholic feeling to it. So yeah, just figured I'd mention that as well.
Yeah. This will probably be out by the time. So recently, like a couple of days ago, I sat down with Owen Likes Comics for his Patreon to talk about Batman the Cult, which is my favorite Batman story. And I got into why, like, I'm very fascinated by religion and cults, and how religious leaders and cult leaders alike are able to manipulate vulnerable people into doing what they want and using that to benefit their own agenda. And I mentioned that in Batman the Cult, Deacon Blackfire is textbook cult leader. Like, it is, like, you think of a cult leader, like, that's what they do, that's what they look like, that's who they are. It's the same thing for Scene of the Crime. Like, truly. I'm forgetting his name now, but the main like antagonist, I guess you would call him, who doesn't really pop up much. Like he pops up here and there, but the big twist at the end is that this guy was kind of behind everything. He's behind like why Maggie was so messed up in the first place.
Yeah.
And this is it's very Charles Manson. Yeah. It's very Jim Jones. It's like cults, like they fascinate me, but not in like a weird, grotesque, like true crime type of way. Yeah. It's just, from a lot of personal experience of growing up Catholic, I never had like an abusive thing. Just to preface, it wasn't like abuse or anything, but I knew about that stuff that went on behind the scenes in some bad sects of Catholicism and Christianity, and I learned about how people can, take those ideas of religion and, like corrupt them basically. Yeah. And so occult stories always fascinate me.
Yeah.
And I think this is another example of very realistic representation of a cult in a comic book. Yeah. And, we get a lot of those. I don't want to say they're not tropes because this is stuff that really happens.
Yeah.
Like child abuse, where we find out that the two sisters, Maggie and Alexandra, they were abused by their father. And, that happens in real world. And you said, Brubaker approaches that with a large amount of, I don't know if respect is the best way to put it, but it's not exploitative.
Yes. Yeah.
It's very just matter of fact, this is what happened, but we're also going to show this messes these people up. They're not just this is not just a fun adventure where we're going to crack this mystery. No, this fucks these people up.
Yeah.
And I don't know. It's very interesting, and it fascinates me that this is so early on in his career, and it's so well done.
He returns to the cult thing quite a few times as well.
Yeah, for sure.
It shows up in Fatale, which makes sense given the material. It shows up in Reckless, and I'm sure there's in Houses of the Unholy, and I'm sure, and Night Fever, I guess. It comes up quite a bit. He's quite interested in it, from what I gather, because he does keep returning to it. But I do think there's something about the human cost that's explored here that he doesn't he explores that again in Reckless, in Friend of the Devil, but I think that's what that book's called. Yeah, it is. But also Batman the Cult is awesome. I'm so glad that it's just gotten reprinted as well. I'm so glad.
I have the original. I have the original 4 issues. Issue 1 is signed by Jim Starlin because I met him at Baltimore Comic Con last year, and then I have the new deluxe.
That's so cool.
So I love that story.
Yeah. But no, I think, and as well, I think from a artistic standpoint, there's crime fiction in general. It's always interesting how it approaches bloodshed and stuff, because I think Michael Lark doesn't so much. He doesn't get into so much detail with the violence. He doesn't sensationalize it, and that also adds to kind of Brubaker not kind of being quite he's trying not to be exploitative, and I think the art goes hand in hand with it by not indulging in in the hands of a lesser creative team or lesser artists and writers, there could easily be some sort of awful, poor taste flashback sequence of sexual assault or child abuse that could be so exploitative and so sensationalized. They don't do anything like that. And it's the 90s. They could have.
They could,
I'm sure there was an editor somewhere who probably told them they should have, but they don't, and I appreciate that. I think
I'll say if this was mainline DC book involving DC characters or Marvel characters or whatever, that probably would have happened. But I think because this was Vertigo and they had full creative control, they didn't have to do that. And I I like that you brought that up because this is like the show don't tell method, or like don't show. Like in movies, they always say, like in horror movies, it's always more grotesque when you don't see what's happening in the murder scene. Like it's just kind of in your head, and you got to think about like, oh, what does this look like? It's always worse. Like what's in your head is always worse than if they show it. It's always the case, and yeah, I think that's what makes this so effective, because I was like, there's so many scenes in this book that got a genuine reaction out of me. And I think that if this was like a gross exploitative, like Mark Miller type of comic, I mean, first of all, it wouldn't work. I would get like the opposite approach where I'll be like, this is kind of it's like comedically grotesque. Like, I don't want to be reading this. And like, I would come away, I don't know, it just wouldn't be as effective as a crime horror type of thing. I'd categorize this as horror too. Like, this is like real world
elements
horror.
of it, it's interesting as well reading this in a true crime has become such a bubble industry in and of itself. And that's like a whole hour-long sidetrack about the ethics and problems of true crime. But it's nice reading something like this where it isn't indulging in the sensationalism of it. After so many things like Dharma or like, you know, even this is like a fictional example, but American Horror Story Cult doesn't exactly explore that subject with any sort of it's quite crude in how it explores it.
It's very surface level too. It's just using all the tropes to tell like a crazy wacky story, you know?
Yeah. And it's like, it's good. It's nice to read something and to experience something that doesn't do that. It's one of those things where it's like, I hate when people say stuff like this, because like realistically you could publish anything today, but it's rare to see a book like this today. It's not that they don't get made, but it feels like a lot of people don't enter this territory. And if you can imagine, at the time, Sin City is like the biggest selling crime comic. And that is full sensationalism. Like, whatever you say
purposefully
about, like,
so, too.
Purposefully so. Like, it takes the same influences, the kind of Ross McDonald's and Raymond Chandler's and hard-boiled crime fiction, but it goes in a more extreme way with it. And Sin City is a great book. I'm not gonna.
Sin City is an idiot. I love Sin City. And the difference with Sin City is a satire. Like, it is straight up a satire.
Everything's turned up to 11 with that book. So it works for that book. It wouldn't work for something like this.
No, not at all. And I mean, again, I don't think this is my like favorite Ed Brubaker book, but I think it's really impressive the fact that this is so early on in his career. You already see the groundwork for stuff that he is gonna do later on. And it's so ahead of everything else that was coming out around this exact in this genre, really, you know, at the big two, of course. And it's just so ahead of his time. And like, revisiting it for this episode, I was so impressed by how much it held up. I really was.
Okay, should we Batman it now? We Batman.
All right, let's talk about some Batman.
Let's talk about Batman.
Batman again with an asterisk, because this is an Elseworld story. So Ed Brubaker, no stranger to Batman. He had a long run on Batman post Nightfall. You know, with I want to say it was Scott McDaniel. It was one of those like '90s artists. It was either like Scott McDaniel or like Phil Hester, one of those guys. But great Batman run.
Yeah, Phil Hester might be.
I think it's Scott McDaniel. I don't know. I know Phil Hester did a lot of Green Arrow. Phil Hester was doing Green Arrow around the same time too. So like, it kind of, and they have a very similar art style. It kind of gets muddy. But Brubaker had a long run on Batman. It was Brubaker doing the Batman title, and then Greg Rucka was doing Detective Comics around post Nightfall, post No Man's Land, like that era. That they called it New Gotham, and Rucka was on Detective, Brubaker was on Batman. that is one of my favorite eras of Batman, because also at that time they were doing Gotham Central, so they were doing all the Batman books at the time, all the main ones at least. Yeah. So Brubaker, no stranger to Batman, and around the same time when he's doing all the main Batman books, this one shot comes out, and it just so happened to be the first time that Brubaker and Phillips collaborated, where Phillips was the main penciler, because as we said before, Phillips just inked Scene of the Crime. He didn't even ink the whole thing. I think he only inked the last 2 issues. So very, again, that asterisk on that being their first collaboration is, it's a big asterisk, because he was, he wasn't on the full series. But this is the first true collaboration of these two, and it's already like it's already a match made in heaven.
Yeah. That's the best way to put it. I was gonna name the creative team really quick. So obviously, of course, we have Batman Gotham Noir, released in 2001. It was a DC Elseworld story. It was a one shot, like I think it was like 80 pages around there, like 70, 80 pages. Written, of course, by Ed Brubaker, art by Sean Phillips, colors by the GOAT Dave Stewart, and letters by Bill Oakley. So yeah, that's just the creative team rundown. All right, go ahead. I love Gotham Noir so much. I think it's great. It's awesome. I think that I could have had so much more with it. To be honest, it's one of those Elseworlds thing where I know it was always built to be a one shot, but there is a part of me that's like, no, you should have done 50 issues of this actually. But I love that Jim Gordon is the main character. Sliding Jim Gordon into that hard-boiled detective role is so clever and happens so seamlessly. Okay, Jim's a drunk, and he's, his wife's left, and it's leading into all the noir stereotypes.
Yeah.
But because it's Jim Gordon, you're like, dude, get your shit together, right?
Yeah.
And I love the way that Selena Kyle is involved in the story. She fits really well into that femme fatale role. Obviously, that's kind of how Brubaker used her in later.
Wait, he also Batman wrote Catwoman.
Yeah.
I forgot. He also at the same time he was writing Catwoman too in the 2000s.
Yeah, and he also comes back to the noir Batman thing with Caped Crusader, the TV show.
Yes.
So
very recently. Yeah.
That's like 2 years ago, or a year ago, something like that.
It might have been last year. I don't even know.
Yeah, it all blurs together. But yeah, Gotham Noir is great. I need to add the context that my favorite. I don't know if it's it's the one that I point to when I say my favorite Batman story. I don't know if it always is, but my favorite Batman story is The Black Mirror by Scott Snyder and Jock.
So good. Incredible,
and that's also a Jim Gordon focused story. So I do like when he's towards the forefront of the narrative. And that's also a mystery in a way that Gotham Noir also is. I enjoy that aspect of Batman. So
yeah, me too. And I love when Jim Gordon's Batman Year One, one of the greatest comics of all time, is essentially a Jim Gordon comic. Yeah. When you boil it down. So as I kind of hinted at in the beginning of this was the first time I read Gotham Noir. I just never got to it. I always saw this as it's that one small thing that they did. I had no idea this was the first time they first collaborated until I went into this and was doing research on getting that full list of everything they did in order. I had no idea this was the first time that they collaborated. It's kind of weird that this is the first one. This kind of seems like something that the creative team has already been doing work together. They're comfortable with each other. Let's do a fun one-off thing. That's what this kind of feels like. Because again, they're so in sync with this. It feels like they've been doing Criminal for 10 years already, and then they do this. That's how in sync they are.
Yeah. At Thought Bubble last year, I got to speak with Sean Phillips quite a bit, and I
so jealous.
Asked him about how his collaboration came to be, and it was basically a case of they knew of each other, and the first chance that, and they knew, and then so they knew of each other's work and liked each other's work. Like Sean loved Low Life, and Ed loved Sean's work on Hellblazer, and so they knew of each other. And then when they briefly worked together with Seed of the Crime, and then the first opportunity they got where they were put together on something, they're like, yeah, let's run with this. Yeah. Is the best way that he described it. So they already had a bond between them where they kind of got each other's style really well. But even then, it speaks something to like the miraculous language of comics that it's like that. It's magic when you put them together. From the very first go, the Gotham Noir, sometimes like you said, it feels like they've been doing Criminal for years at this point. I thought originally that it was published after Gotham Central ended, and that's not the case, right? This is 2001. This is before Sleeper or anything else. This is their first collaboration, and they've already just in sync with each other in such a beautiful way. It's great.
Yeah, it's incredible. And like you said earlier, I could take like 50 issues of this because I loved this. I think that this rules, but the ending kind of soured me a little bit. I don't think it ends very well, but we'll kind of get into that. Yeah. But yeah, so this, and also what's so interesting is that, again, like we're talking about the evolution of Sean Phillips, and Phillips had like basically an entire career already before they even started working with each other. Like like you mentioned, he did like a 50 issue run on Hellblazer with Paul Jenkins.
Yeah, he was on Hellblazer a lot. He was on Lucifer. Time. He did. I'm pretty sure he did some Shade the Changing Man.
Yeah, I want to say like a couple issues. He did
quite a few Vertigo books. He was around in that area.
But I mean, like really, he did a very long run on Hellblazer with Paul Jenkins. He did, he was doing a lot of cover work around that time too. So he had like already established himself as a big name. Like, people knew who he was, and Brubaker was kind of up and coming around this time. So I don't know. I find it so fascinating, and I look at Phillips's art here, and what's so weird, and it might be because Dave Stewart's coloring it and he's just the greatest. This looks more in line of what Sean Phillips is doing today. Yeah. Like weirdly, we're gonna talk about it when we get to like Sleeper and like Fatale and stuff from like that kind of era, like right after this. But this looks more in line with the stuff that he's doing now, which I found really fascinating. Yeah, this book is awesome. It's so good. It's a lot of fun. Like you said, I love seeing Jim Gordon take the role of the typical crime noir protagonist. He's a drunk. He does not get his shit together. He's a wreck. Yeah. So I guess like let's kind of get into some of the story here. The story revolves around it's a cold open. Jim Gordon is getting chased by what we think is Batman. And we know Batman catches up to him. He's like, I'm going to take you in. You committed murder. You're a criminal. Fuck you. And Jim's like, wait, hold on. Let's flashback. Let me explain. So then we get the entire story is essentially a flashback, until the ending. But, we see Jim Gordon down his luck. He's a drunk. His life's a wreck. And Selena Kyle basically comes into his office and she asks him to come to her nightclub. I think it's called the Kitty Cat, which is hilarious. I love that. Yeah. But yeah, so this is kind of just a mob story. It's nothing like crazy. It's nothing like groundbreaking, but it's just a really fun mob story involving Batman characters, and it takes place in the 40s. So it's just it's that typical crime noir with all the tropes starring your favorite Batman characters. It's just, I love it so much. It's so much fun.
Yeah. I think the fun thing about Elseworlds, like the best Elseworlds stories, in my opinion, the ones that withstand the test of time, they're either like just genuinely incredible standalone comics, or the ones that it's just fun to see those characters in that setting. And
like Gotham by Gaslight too.
Like Gotham by Gaslight is another example of that. And Gotham Noir is similar to Gotham by Gaslight because it's very much the case of like you know, it's just you get a kick if you're a Batman fan. You get a kick out of seeing Jim Gordon as a 1940s detective, and you know, Selena Kyle. Like, it's not really a superhero story. Batman is in it, and I like how Batman appears because
he's in it.
Yeah, he's
kind of in it.
He's kind of in
audio listeners. We're doing air quotes.
Yeah. I like that he is a force of nature a little bit. Like in that cold open when Jim's like running from him, it's very much a case of like, oh fuck, that's the Batman. That's the goddamn Batman. Awesome. Like, yeah. And in general, that's something that Brubaker always leaned in with his Batman stuff. Because obviously in Gotham Central, there's also like a whole world that exists outside of Batman. And then when Batman shows up, it's like, holy shit, it's Batman. I think he understands that the character, the power of that character is both in his presence and absence. And I think this story wouldn't work as well with Batman in the lead. It's nice that it's Jim in the lead, and it leans into these tropes and explores it. And it just works so seamlessly. But you know, that's just my 2 cents. I think it's awesome. I was rereading it this morning, preparing for this, and I was like, damn, this is so good. You know,
it really is.
It also kind of missed me at first because I read all the major books, but because I was going by physically getting them, I just kind of didn't read this for the longest time. And then when I was researching my dissertation, I was like, oh, this exists. So I went back and I read that. So yeah.
Yeah, I think this was reprinted because Brubaker did that. The first, I can't remember what the book is called, but it's like the first meeting of Batman and Joker that he did with Doug Mahnke, and they have a deluxe edition for that collects Gotham Noir. Like randomly collects this. So I think that's like the first time it's been, and that's still in print. You can go buy it on like Amazon and stuff. Yeah. And I think that's the first time it's been reprinted since I want to say like 2011, because I know that they did a reprint of it for they reprinted it in, I want to say it was DC Presents. They had like a line where they would reprint full stories in DC Presents, and they reprinted it there. But yeah, this is, you know, I've always heard of this story, but like you, I missed it completely. Like I just never went back and read it, but you know, it's one of those comics that's kind of, you know, it's kind of, I don't want to say it's underground, but it's not as well known as other Elseworld stories because, you know, the most well-known Elseworld story are like we mentioned, Gotham by Gaslight is probably the most well-known. And you got like your Superman Red Suns, your Justice League The Nails, like those like big ones like that everyone kind of knows about. But, you know, this, and part of me thinks that it could, because it's just like one singular issue. I mean, Gotham by Gaslight is also one issue, but it was the first Elseworld story, so it has that, you know, that appeal to it.
Gotham by Gaslight's also been adapted and reprinted, and like, I'm sure if this one would be as well known and well regarded if it had an animated movie made of it, kind of thing. You know, like Superman Red Sun also got adapted into a movie, so did like The New Frontier and stuff like that. So that also plays a part in it. That obviously a lot of people become aware of these things through adaptations. I know that there was a little surge in interest with it because of Caped Crusader, because obviously that's playing with the same idea as well. And I gotta respect how Brubaker, he very much is like, oh, there was an idea in a book I did 20 years ago that I really want to write more of. I'm just going to bring it back. Let's just run it back. You know, like cults. Sure, I'll do another book about cults. Right? You know, he does 3 books about cults in like a year. Right? Oh, I want to do another 1940s Batman thing. I'm doing another 1940s Batman thing, right?
I mean, it helps not being, you know, on the internet and hearing a bunch of like losers yell in your face.
I haven't actually seen Caped Crusader because I remember
it's pretty good.
I watched it. The internet nattering about it was annoying me, so I was like, yeah, I'm just gonna stay away. You know?
It's not like the greatest thing. It's not Batman the Animated Series. I don't think anything will ever get to that level, you know. But it's, for what it is, it's very good. Very good. I cannot remember the voice actor for Bruce Wayne and Batman, but he does such a great job. Such an incredible job. But yeah, I'd say it's definitely worth a watch.
he's in Midnight Mass. He plays the priest in Midnight Mass. I know that. What's his name?
Mm-hmm.
I know who you're talking about, because I remember when he cast him as Batman, I was like, oh, that's such a no-brainer, like, casting decision.
Yeah, but he rules, and that show, it's very good. A lot of interesting stuff in there. I'd say it's worth a watch, especially now that it's been like a year or two. You know, no one's like, you know, yelling about it into an echo chamber.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, definitely a good show.
It's interesting as well with Gotham Noir that, like, there's a tendency with Elseworld stories to try and, like, hint at as many things as you possibly can. Mm-hmm. I think that's part of the appeal for a lot of people, this kind of Easter egg hunt kind of thing. And Gotham Noir does that. It makes hints to the Joker, makes hints to Harvey Dent is a character.
I mean, big hints to the Joker.
Yeah. Harvey Dent makes a lot of logical sense.
That's
a character that, like, it makes sense that they would factor into the story. So it's kind of the same with, like, the Doom that came to Gotham, Mike Mignola's Elseworld thing. There comes a certain point in that book where he's like, I want to introduce as many Batman things as I can. And Gotham Noir kind of has that just a bit. But it doesn't really kill the story because it is a mystery. So there's that element of it where you kind of can bounce around a little bit and you can introduce stuff and details that are seemingly superficial or don't need to have super relevance. But I do think it's interesting how it falls into that. And like you said, the ending is a little anticlimactic. It does kind of just fizzle out a tiny bit.
That's like why I don't love this. I think it rules. I think it's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
But I don't like love it. I like it. The thing that we've kind of been hinting at the whole time is the thing that kind of like I don't love about this is the inclusion of the Joker. I think it's just kind of thrown in there. Like, we get the introduction to the guy's name is Jack Napier, like in the 89 movie, which I loved. I love whenever Elseworld story call him Jack Napier. I just love that. And I didn't expect him to I thought he was just going to be an Easter egg. I wasn't like, he fully just becomes the Joker. Like, and like out of nowhere too. Like, it's literally in a caption box. They say, oh, the mob beat him up and he went crazy. And then now he's just the Joker, and I'm like, okay, sure, I guess. But then that would have been one thing, just a fun Easter egg, and like, oh, now he's in prison or in Arkham Asylum, whatever. He's the Joker now, but no, he becomes the full-on main villain at the end of the story, which it did kind of bug me because it's just out of nowhere, really. You know, he's not really he's just kind of a background character in this whole story. Like, he's just the guy that's kind of feeding information to Harvey Dent, but not really, it's not like big information. It's like information that we kind of that Dent already knows. So it's really kind of out of nowhere. And then, you know, the ending's a lot of fun. It's a fun action scene, you know, Sarah Essen, who also, that's very interesting that Sarah Essen is, just for background, Sarah Essen is the woman that Jim Gordon cheats on his wife with in Batman Year One.
Yeah.
All right, so and she becomes like a major character later on, especially in like No Man's Land. But yes, I think it's very interesting that Sarah Essen is the mother of Barbara Gordon and the one that's already married to Jim Gordon. I think that's, I like that a lot. I like Sarah Essen a lot, so I like that decision. But yeah, her and young Barbara Gordon are captured by the Joker, and we get typical Joker shenanigans at the end.
I wonder what that's trying to evoke, the image of, the memory of. Just a little bit.
Oh my god. Yeah.
Hey, I prefer this book to that one. I'm not gonna lie.
I mean, Jesus, I didn't even think about that until now. Oh my god. But yeah, you know, the ending's a little anticlimactic, but I do say, like, what I really like, I like the flashbacks to World War II, because in this story, Jim Gordon and Bruce Wayne fought together in World War II.
I love that. It's such a great way to bond them together, to have that dynamic.
And so I love how, like, at the party earlier on, like in the beginning of the book, how, like, they already established that they have that bond and friendship. And Gordon calls Bruce Lieutenant. And Bruce is like, don't call me that. I hate that. And I love that so much. And what's interesting is at the very end of this book, so Jim Gordon dies, he gets killed by the Joker, saving Barbara. And we get, at the funeral scene, we get like a flashback to the war, and we find out like why Jim Gordon's so fucked up.
Yeah.
He killed, he saved Bruce Wayne by killing another soldier. And then when the soldier's helmet like came off, it was like a child, like maybe like 14 years old. Yeah. And that fucked him up for life. Like that's why he's a drunk. That's why he's so messed up throughout this entire story. And then what I also love is that Bruce reveals like he never killed anyone or shot a gun during the war. Like that's why Gordon had to save him.
Yeah.
Because just like Batman, we know like Batman hates guns. He refuses to use guns. It's like Brubaker gets it. Even in Elseworlds, where he's in World War II, he doesn't use guns.
Yeah.
And it's also revealed, which this kind of confused me a bit. I might just be dumb. Where Harvey says, "Oh, Batman's not real. I made him up." It's like, what? What?
I always took that as a cope a bit. Okay. It is established that Gordon's an unreliable narrator because he's drunk.
Yeah.
And he does like have like he blacks out and he has like these like, you know, like missing memories and stuff. There's so many times. That's why it's like, there's a tension. Like, did he kill that person?
Yeah.
He don't remember shit.
Yeah. And Batman's also just like a shadow.
Yeah.
Like, it's just a shadow with eyes.
So I think there's two ways to interpret it. Either, Harvey just made it up, and Batman is like the imaginary figure of Jim's past coming to haunt him, or like, you know, his like Jim's demons, or Bruce is Batman and Harvey is just coping and seething a little bit. You know, he's making shit up to save face. Right?
So
as a politician. Yeah.
So I think it's the first one, but. And that's what I thought the entire, because I'm reading this whole thing. I'm like, oh, yeah, Batman is just a figment of his imagination. He's like, he is just this giant hulking shadow with claws, and he has, all you can see is the white eyes. So, and, you know, he doesn't even have like real dialogue bubbles. It's just, it's kind of like, it's not thought bubbles, but it's, you know, it's abstract. But then what Harvey says is, it would make sense if Harvey was like, no, I just made him up as just like, you know, a gag at the end, like, you know, maybe he did. But Harvey says, I made him up so that criminals had something to fear. So it's like, wait, that makes no sense though, because if Gordon's the one that's hallucinating him, then why did... I don't know.
Yeah, that's the part where that falls through.
That's where I feel like it's kind of like that last page is like where this like really fizzled out. I'm like, oh, you didn't really think that over.
Yeah. Because I really like the reveal of why Jim is like that, you know?
Me too. I think it's phenomenal.
Yeah, you can see so many, like, you could probably see like Batman canon purists who are like, oh, but Jim wouldn't be like that because he's good-natured, and then, you know, like the idea that it's an accident. He also, in main continuity, is a drunk and cheats on his wife and all that other stuff. But, you know,
also this is not real. Like it's not real. It's not that important.
Yeah. I don't know. I've got some like controversial Batman takes that I could throw out here, and I'll get like a funny little text after this on Twitter, which is just like a bunch of numbers and an address.
Hey, listen, if you want to, you're welcome to say whatever hot take you want on this podcast. You know,
I fear that I only like Batman stories in isolation. I appreciate Batman stories by not thinking about continuity at all ever. I like the idea that like year one is in continuity. I don't care.
That's with me with all Big Two comics.
Every Batman. And so like Elseworld story, I find it really easy to appreciate because I don't need it to fit all the pieces. But same thing with main thing, like the Black Mirror, my favorite Batman thing. I know it ruffled some feathers because Jim Gordon Jr. became canonically a serial killer. And I was like, yeah, I kind of don't care. It just works for that story. And you could read that story on its own and it's great. And that's that.
And you know, funnily enough, like in retrospect, people love that retcon in Black Mirror. It's always like the immediate reaction. And then like years later, like, oh, that was pretty cool. But I'm the exact same way. And you know, I say it all the time. Like I love my continuity, but I'd rather it be broken or, you know, kind of not really ignored, but you know, like broken or retconned or whatever to fit a good story. And I'm a comic book fan where I don't read by character. At least I have like a few characters, like Daredevil. I'll always read like most of his comics. I have like a few, but I primarily go by creator. Like I only like all my pull lists are creators I like, not a character or a book. Like if I'm reading, I'll give Daredevil an example. If I'm reading Daredevil and I'm not enjoying the current run, I'll just drop it and wait for a writer that I like to come back on. You know, I'm not that type of reader, and I think both of us are similar in that way, where we pick up our interests in comics come from the people that make them, as opposed to the characters that are in there. And you know, there's no right or wrong way. Like I'm not saying that you're wrong for reading comics because you like the characters. Like X-Men's another example. I read a lot of X-Men based off of characters I like. Not right now, but you know, it's a whole thing. I don't even think that take you just had was a hot take. I don't think you're gonna get any flack for that. A lot of readers are like that.
I never talk about big two comics on the internet because like I try
not to.
I got doxxed talking about Spider-Man for the most like.
Well, it's Spider-Man. That community is a bunch of like. Listen, the Spider-Man community. I don't even get me started on those people.
There was this guy who was yelling at me and Anne from the Comics Collective back when she was still on Twitter. Shout out Anne, she's awesome. And she posted something, and I quote tweeted it agreeing, and I don't know if this happened to her too, but the guy who was yelling at us doxed me. So that was fun. But no, in terms of Batman, like Gotham Noir, I think it is really good. And the fact that it's their first showing together, like you said, I kind of didn't say anything to this, but like Phillips' art is so good here. And it is Dave Stewart's like murky, like almost like gothic colors where it's like red and black and orange and these kind of dark shades. Like it really works. It really it looks great. And what I wouldn't do for them to put it, like I know it is in print again, but like a prestige reprint of the just original issue would be nice.
I mean, so like
quite nice.
It is like I said earlier, it is in that deluxe edition of I want to say it's called The Man Who Laughs. I think that's what it's called.
Let's check. It is The Man Who Laughs deluxe.
Yeah,
edition.
So it is in that big deluxe edition, but it's, you know, it's oversized, it looks great, you know, it's omnibus size, but it's not like the main feature or whatever you want to call it in that book. Like, that is The Man Who Laughs deluxe edition, and then they just threw this in here because, it's another Ed Brubaker Batman comic. Like, let's throw a couple stuff in here to fill out some pages, which I do appreciate that this got reprinted, you know?
Yeah.
But I would love, like, you know, a nice prestige reprint of this, or just something with like a ton of extras in the back, you know, or, you know, maybe they could do like what they did with the Elmer Fudd Batman, the Lee Weeks and Tom King series, where they do a deluxe edition and put both the, like a colored version and then like a black and white version. That would be awesome.
Oh, because I know that Sean did some issues of Batman. Like, just like 2 issues of Batman.
Legend. Yeah, he did Legend of the Dark Knight with Paul Jenkins.
Yeah. So you could throw that in there, you know. I don't know. I don't work at DC. I'm not in charge of decision making.
Listen, DC, if you're listening, Ed Brubaker and Sean Phillips, they're very popular. You can make a couple quick bucks if you reprint. Honestly, I would love to do the Batman Elmer Fudd like thing where you put a colored version and then do a black and white version and put it all in one deluxe hardcover. That would be so awesome. I'd love that.
Or put it with Darwin Cook's like ego and like
you could do that too.
Also, Ed Brubaker, if you are listening, is Batman a figment of Jim's imagination? Did Harvey make him up, or is Bruce actually Batman? It's a 24-year long running question. I doubt you'll answer it, but I'd like to know.
Come on the show, Ed. That'll be our very first question.
we just ask like stupid, like none of it about the process or art or meaning. It's like, yeah, so what was up with this? Like, you know.
Yeah. But yeah, so Gotham Noir, it's a lot of fun. Not a perfect book, but for what it is, it's great. I wish we got more. This really could be like a whole series or like maybe like a mini series, just something like when I was reading this, I'm like, man, we could get so much more out of this. I'd love to explore this world, but you know, it is what it is. It's a fun one shot. I like it a lot.
Yeah.
So we're not going to do the Brubaker Phillips ranking yet because
we can rank. I thought of a rank.
I mean, we haven't. This is the first one. We could save it. I think what we should do. So all right, I'm going to retcon previously what I said. What we should do is at the end of this miniseries, we'll do it because we'll have all the books.
Okay. So
you know what I mean? Because like right now, next episode's going to be Sleeper. You know, it's like. All right, let's do our ranking. It's either Gotham Noir or Sleeper. Which one do we have above it? It's like, you know. Yeah. So at the end of this miniseries, we'll do our official ranking.
Okay.
We'll have our own lists too, because I'm sure we'll differ. But so that's the two books. I guess before we kind of like wrap up this first episode, I want to ask you like what are just some things you're enjoying? Whether it be, you know, comics, movies, video games, TV, a life experience, like anything. Like what have what have you been enjoying recently?
Ooh, okay. I've been Death Stranding 2 comes out at the end of the month. So I've been replaying a bit of the first one. I've forgotten how much I enjoyed that game. And I think especially in a post-pandemic world, I think it hits quite different. I think it hits harder. Yeah. It blows my mind that game came out pre-COVID. It feels so timely, and I'm excited to see what video game Kojima does with. I mean, it's Kojima.
Kojima has like he's like Galaxy Brain. Like he's. Did you watch any of the Summer Games Fest and like all that stuff during that weekend? Did you see the Snake Eater? They have the multiplayer. They tease the multiplayer.
Yeah,
I'm so excited for that game.
Snake Eater Delta comes out on my birthday, so that's great.
Ooh, great timing.
There's also like plug the GQ article on video game Kojima on the life and death of Hideo Kojima is a great interview. It's rare to get like a good Kojima interview that isn't just like asking about MGS. So I really liked it. Like it's really good. In terms of else. I recently did a review of Predator Killer of Killers because I really enjoyed that. And I've been in a horror mood, but I've also been revisiting the films of Wes Anderson. So I rewatched Royal Tenenbaums earlier in the year, and I've started just kind of the ball has been rolling, and now I've just ended up rewatching most of them, and I'm gonna do all of them. I think I've got 3 or 4 left. And it's been interesting to revisit it. He was one of the first directors whose style I really fell in love with. And I know that people can get quite heated about his movies for some strange reason. I genuinely think it's not that deep. And I think sometimes people are getting really like, he makes movies he wants to make. If you don't like him, that's okay. You're probably not going to like the next one. If you like them, you like them. That's kind of what I stand, you know? Tenenbaums is my favorite. So
it's up there. It's like top 3.
Yeah, it's really good. At MCM London, I was asking creators what their favorite Wes Anderson movie was, and the winner, in terms of, I asked 12 people, 6 people said Rushmore.
That's weird.
I was so taken aback.
That's weird. Okay.
So many people said Rushmore, and then out of the 6 remaining, 4 said Grand Budapest. And the last 2 said Royal Tenenbaums. So that's the top 3, I guess.
I think Grand Budapest is my number 1. Yeah, I love that movie so much.
It's so good. It's so fantastic.
Yeah.
But no, that's me.
Yeah. So, well, I want to ask you because we're talking about gaming a bit. How much FOMO do you have right now over the Switch 2?
None at all. Oh,
so I have so much FOMO. Listen, I'm such a huge Nintendo fan, and I'm so mad at myself for not having the money right now to buy a Switch 2. I'm so mad that I didn't save because I want one so badly. I'm just watching before we got out to record this. I've just been watching like Mario Kart World, like track ranking videos. I'm just like, God damn it! Why did I save up for a Switch 2?
I'm saving up for the Lego One Piece sets. That come out in August. Yeah,
it's valid.
But no, a friend of mine who lives very close to me, like down the street, has a Switch 2. So we've all been playing Mario Kart World with him on his console. So there's no real like FOMO thing there. I'm also not a huge Nintendo guy. I did say that depending on what Duskbloods, the From Software game, is, like depending on how that ends up, I might invest in the Switch 2. But I'm kind of happy with my PlayStation at the moment, you know.
I'm happy with my PC, but it's hard to get Nintendo stuff on the computer. So
that's fair. That's fair.
But I mean, man, I want to Switch 2. I'm so excited for it. So I say that it's one of my favorite games of all time. It's like definitely top 2. Super Mario Odyssey. When I played it for the first time like 2 years ago, and just to preface, like in Mario Odyssey has like over 900 collectible moons, and I got 750 in 3 days. So I was obsessed with that game, and the new Donkey Kong game that's coming out. Is people are speculating that it's made by the same people because the trailer that we've gotten and like the game, the people that went to like the Switch 2 events that have had hands on with the game have said it feels a lot like Mario Odyssey. So I really want to play that game. Like I really do. And Nintendo's like a little weird with how they don't say like who develops their games. Like you have to literally check the credits at the end of the game. I think it's to hide like people from like going after them on social media because they had like a big situation with that a couple years back. But regardless, I really am looking forward to eventually playing that Donkey Kong game. It looks so fun.
Yeah, no, I can imagine.
But so thank you so much for coming on again. And so I'm really excited to do the rest of the series with you. I've been wanting to do like a big Brubaker Phillips project on this podcast, and I'm gonna start doing more of these like mini series. Like obviously I'm doing the Krakoa one still. I got a couple episodes left of that. Starting this one. I really like this format of just kind of focusing on one era, creative team, just like one kind of focused thing that goes on for multiple parts. And I wanted to do the Brubaker Phillips one for a long time, and you were the first person that I thought of. And
I've become the resident Brubaker guy in comics Twitter, and I find that really funny. I guess I did it to myself a little bit, but like I do think that's really funny.
I mean, listen, it's not Brubaker, that's not a bad thing to like hyperfixate on, Yeah. What's funny though too is I was talking to Owen Likes Comics a couple of days ago, and I mentioned that I was recording with you because he's a mutual friend of ours, and I mentioned that I was recording with you, and he said, "Oh, are you guys doing an Ed Brubaker book?" And I was like, "We're doing the entire series of Brubaker and Phillips, actually." So, you are the Ed Brubaker guy.
Because I told him that we were talking about doing a series, and he was like, "Oh, I wonder what it's going to be on." Probably Brubaker, and I was like, "Oh yeah, all right." He's great. Shout out Owen Likes Comics.
Shout out Owen Likes Comics. Yeah, and also go to Owen's Patreon because I mentioned it earlier in the video, but just so you guys know, I'll link Owen's Patreon in the description because I was literally, it should be out like the same day as this episode, if not a couple days after. I was on his Patreon to talk about Batman the Cult because that was his last video that he did on his main channel, so that was a ton of fun. Go check that out when that's out. But yeah, so anything that you want to plug really quickly, where can everybody find you on social media? I'll give you the floor.
Yeah, I'm at Comics Jared on Instagram, Twitter, Blue Sky. I still use Twitter for some reason.
Unfortunately.
You can check me out at Jared Bird. If you just search Jared Bird Comics Beat, I'll show up. And I do have a currently inactive blog called Jared Talks Comics. I will get round to posting there somewhere. sometime again. But I'm a bit busy. So yeah, that's me. I do comic stuff, horror stuff, wrestling on occasion. Yeah.
All right, awesome. I'll link all that down in the show notes as well. Thank you, listeners, and until next time.